What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I'll be making a full review for the Romancing Festival Furfur banner that brings Furfur, a damage dealer and also counter specialist that uses Axes and also water spells. She's actually pretty good and can be used for remembrance and sometimes on hard challenges. Vampire Lady uses Rapiers again, and she is a character that can increase your resistance over time, but she is very fragile. Pale Nymph is a debuffer for multi-status and can use wind spells. Now let's start talking about Furfur. She gives a name to the banner. She is a hybrid unit that uses both STR and intelligence, since she can use skills and spells. Both status are actually pretty nice, but status distribution suffers a little. She's a character that can counter but starts with very low endurance and will. Love and Charisma are also just on the average levels. Moving on for passives, she starts the turn getting a 50% increase in cold damage. This triggers 3 times per battle, so by turn 3 she has 150% increase in cold damage. Also when landing cold attacks, she recovers 2 BP. By start of battle, she starts with 13 BP, and she also buffs all of her status by 25%. Then when she's directly attacked, she has a 50% chance to reduce damage taken and counter with Ice Stalagmite. This is a triple S spell that has cold and slash damage, so very nice for it being double element, but it uses her intelligence. You have to remember that when she counters, she's also going to get that 2 extra BP. Then when she is attacking with skills, she will then give herself this attack boost that increases damage potential by 15%, lasts for 2 turns, and buff all of her offensive status by 15%. That is STR, Dexterity, Agility, and Intelligence. It's good because if she is using skills, she's increasing her damage potential. Now when she is attacking with spells, she will then grant herself a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 20%, lasts for 2 turns and can stack. She will also buff all of her defensive status, endurance, will, love, and charisma by 15%. So if you want to get more defensive, use spells. Then she has Intrinsic X, increasing damage potential by 20%, so she reaches as much as 170, besides the attack boost. Then she decreases damage taken by 40% when resisting, and has a 37% chance to evade resisted attacks. Skill number 1 is an Axe skill. That means that it's based on STR and will also trigger her attack boost and offensive status boost. And it's full AoE for free with slash and cold. That means that she also gets another 2 BP for a 5 BP cycle. All of her attacks have cold, so remember that. The second one, called Diamond Heart, is a fast roll attack with cold and slash damage and S power. And for 7 BP, it's nice because she can actually use this 3 times in a row. But right now, it's not strong enough to farm in free quest, so it's just okay to have, but nothing important. Could be used, for example, on Death Master, but Death Master is not really a hard challenge for members, but new players will actually have a usage. And this is a spell that means that it's based on intelligence and will also boost her defense and defensive status. The third skill is called Sweet's Frozen Axe. It's a single target slashing cold attack that before attacking grants herself an attack boost that increases her damage potential by 20% on max level, lasts for 5 turns, can stack, will also recover her HP by around 1.2 thousand, and well, she will then launch the attack. The attack itself is pretty weak, it's just D power. It feels more like a C power attack because of the attack boost. And then she recovers 2 BP from her cold attack, and then launches Ice Stalagmite. That skill that she counters as well. That again is a triple S power attack with cold and slash. In this case, we open it with a skill. So you buff your offensive status and get the attack boost. And then she follows up with a spell. So you're gonna get the defense boost and a defensive status boost as well. So you're getting everything here. And you are getting 4 BP back as well. The skill itself costs 13, that's kind of big, but when you say that you get 4 back and you get 7 BP by the end of a turn, that means that in this turn, you use it just part of what you have. You open the fight with 13 and you are left with 7, right? Then you can use the skill number 1 that is free, and it will lead you into 12 BP. on turn 3. If you have at least one character that gives BP to you, you can actually use Sweet Frozen Axe again. That is nice because you'll be able to stack this attack boost and get all the other effects again, because they last for 2 turns. You actually want to use it again. But if you have BP batteries, it may be better to actually use something from inheritance. For example, Cure Water. If you have Nal's daughter in your party, she gives 1 BP in a turn and then another in the second turn. Or someone like Liz that gives BP every turn. Both will work, because Cure Water will recover her HP. And remember that she starts with very low endurance and will. So sometimes she would take very big damage before she can actually start stacking her defensive status and even offensive boosts. That means that if you are bringing her with BP batteries, she can heal more often and keep up with her cycle to have better effects. The only problem with this character is that she does not always counter. It's just a 50% chance, and she starts slow, but eventually becomes pretty strong. And I do believe that people can use her on hard challenges and not just Remembrance, although she'll shine more there. In many challenges where the enemies will directly attack and you can actually just counter. But even without considering the counter, she stays alive because she can self-heal a lot and can do damage as well. She also has Hailstorm Plus as inheritance, a full AoE cold attack that has double S power, very strong. She can even use this on turn 1 if she wants. But then again, there's no many challenges that will actually take advantage of this attack. If you want to run her for example, Death Master, Diamond Heart is pretty good already. But in some other Remembrance where you can do damage to multiple enemies, this can be useful. But now there's an interesting comparison to make with Furfur and a very lovable character. When you look on passives, you see that ScherBR is actually very similar to your Furfur. He does have an extra, he nullifies some damage, but he has a 50% chance to counter with a triple S attack that recovers. He does have attack that has 2 hits as well, that also increases damage, but he is also a debuffer. He does have intrinsic, and he switches between attack, defense, boost, and all status buffs. He has much less competition as a counter and damage dealer than Furfur though, that's slash and cold, while Bertrand is both heat, cold, and shadow. The best thing about this character is that it yields an axe, and you always have room to use new axe users for Remembrance. But it's also very easy to skip Furfur because even if she's the main character from the banner, we will just keep getting characters with similar design and even extra attacks with guarantee. Furfur still relies on having good cycles of switching between her attacks, and that is not something that will stick in the meta. The good thing is that she can also be used as a counter unit, but even then you may already have people like Forneus or other slash counter units, and she will not add too much as just a counter, more of a slash and cold damage dealer, especially for Remembrance. With all that said, she receives a triple S grade in the tier list, but is also easy to skip. The next character is Vampire Lady, and she's a very odd one. Using Rapiers again means that she has 117 dexterity and just 90% STR, but she can inherit skills from past styles. The problem here is that her endurance and will are way too bad, and she would not be buffing those status. Her agility is pretty good at least, and she does have good enough charisma. For passives, the first one, if no damage is taken in that turn, she will then activate 2 different effects for the party. 5% hit up and 5% defense up, increasing your damage potential by 5% for the whole fight, decreasing the damage taken for the whole fight by 5%, multiplicative, and trigger a max of 5 times per battle. But this is also related to not taking damage. The second one, she has 2 extra BP by the end of a turn and also has a 37% chance to recover all surviving allies by around 250. Then she has 30% increase in damage at all times, and when being attacked she has 25% chance to evade. Yeah, all of this passive seems to be designed a long time ago. There's many problems with this character, but I'll be discussing later. As for our skills, the first one is Bat Remedy, a single target piercing slash attack that has deep power and 1 BP cost only and recovers a user HP by around 1,200. The recover part is amazing, damage doesn't matter too much, but it's just 1 BP. The second one, Roundabout Plus, it's a single target attack with double S power and 6 BP cost. Since she gets 5, she can actually use this many times in a row and keep using it. The problem is that we already have many damage dealers that do much more than just double S power per turn, and there's no other effect on the skill. The third one, Sugary Sweets Parade, a single target fast skill that can be used 5 times per battle, that costs 9 BP for just S power damage, very weak. But after attacking, they enter evasive stance of 1 turn, it will not take any damage or even ailments in that turn, and when the attack lands, it will apply defense down to the enemy, decreasing their defenses by up to 15% on max level and lasts for 2 turns. Well, this effect here is almost useless, and the evasive stance is the interesting part, but the cost of the skill should have been decreased, because 9, okay, you start the fight with 10, and then you will just use this evasion. That will lead into getting this defense up and heat up for the party, but just 5%, and then recover their HP a little. Turn 2, she has just 5% damage reduction and 25% chance to evade. With 65% endurance and 72% will, she's going to die to most hard challenges. No questions asked, she just won't survive. And then what she tries to do is to recover that 1.2 thousand to keep alive, but it's even a problem since her agility is too high. She may recover before the enemy attacks. It needed to be delayed, or I don't know, be placed on the back row. And then on turn 3, she uses Sugary Sweets Parade again to get that another 5% damage reduction and heat ups for everyone. But will she still be alive by the end of turn 2? I don't know. In most challenges, she won't. And that's already a very big problem with the design of the character. Her damage is not great. Her gimmick is limited, weak, and the character will not survive. So we have lots of problem with the design of this character. Even if you want to use her because you like the character, maybe just on Remembrance, because on real hard challenges she just simply doesn't work. And if you want to get some inheritances, you have Heaven on Earth for stun. If you want to stun Kazinsi. She also has Blood Rage that becomes triple S attack that can debuff endurance of the enemy by 30%. She can apply Charm if you want for Wuhan, and she has this single target from her past style. She also has the Doki Doki Vampire Charm. It's a fully AoE attack that can charm, better for Wuhan. Also Bloody Spike from her past Rapier style. This is a single target attack that then follows up with another single target attack that recovers. It's better if you want her for damage, but then again, you have to use many defense boosts in order to keep her alive to use this, just because you love the character. And her Global Axe style has Rising Nova Plus that can be used to buff break. She has 5 BP, meaning that she can use every 2 turns, but then again, the character itself will have lots of problems to survive. So by the end, Vampire Lady is a disposable character that barely offers anything to stay alive and use her gimmick. We already have way too many characters that have better setups, barely fits into the tier list, receiving an SS- grade, and will be easily forgotten. The last character is Pale Nymph, and she is a mage. You can see 120% intelligence, 92% agility is just okay, but her endurance and will are actually good compared to the other 2 characters. She can actually resist well. Charisma is also pretty high for self-healings. When she lands an attack, she recovers 2 BP and also recovers HP by around 270, and she will also grant the target's Biting of Thorns. That's passive that will be applied to the enemy, that when this enemy is attacked, it will be reducing intelligence and agility by 5%. And in this case, it's 3 times. So if you apply a skill and then you use someone else later, up to 3 attacks you'll be debuffing intelligence and agility. This is good and bad. The good thing, if you are actually fast and you can use Pale Nymph to apply the Biting Thorns and then use someone else in your party that is also fast and goes before the enemy, and if the enemy does not get too irritated when you debuff too much. But there's more into this strategy I'll talk about later. She also starts the fight with 12 BP, and by the end of a turn she has 25% chance to recover HP by around 1.4 thousand and recover 3 BP. This is a very old type of passive that, well, could have been much better. Then we have Latent Bloom Defense, another old type of passive, increasing damage potential by 20%, her only damage potential. She also gets defense ups 5 times, reducing damage taken by 10%. In the end, by turn 5, you have around 40% damage reduction, but on turn 1, just 10%. So turn 1, you have to defend yourself well. Spell number 1 is Shade Ball, and it's Slash. As you can see, she uses Wind Element, and it has 1 BP cost only and applies morale down small to a single enemy, decreasing their damage potential by 15%. Lasts for 2 turns. That means that you want to use this every 2 turns as well. The second skill, Reborn Will. It's a full AoE attack that has a low chance to apply Confusion, Charm for 4 turns. This works for Wuhan. It also has a low chance to apply Instant Q. This works for Siegfried. So, for just 6 BP, and you get 2 BP when landing attacks. She can actually keep using this skill many times before she needs to recover more BP. That's similar to how you do with Death. Well, the second to last version of Death had that skill called Burial Right, and it's 7 VP. Now you have one skill that uses even less, and a character that has 5 VP per turn. The problem is that you don't have a usage for this much anymore. For example, when we are grinding on free quest, the enemies will always be resistant to instant kill, at least so far. And there's no other place where you grind right now. But for Siegfried Remembrance Battle, it works. Then the last skill is Gift of Thorns, that is full AoE and fast, 8 power, and grants the target 7 Binding Thorns. Since it's AoE, if you have multiple enemies, every single one of them will actually get 10 stacks of Binding Thorns because you are already getting the free tree from the passive. Just remember that even when you're using Reborn Will or Shade Ball, you will also be getting this 3 Binding Thorns. But in this case, you have 10 stacks of 5% debuffs that reaches 50%, especially if you are using characters with chase mechanics or multi-attacks. Multi-attacks, not multi-hits. For example, Left Fork from Mirza and Albert will only trigger once, but characters like Leon that has multiple attacks via chase, he will trigger multiple times. So, it's very good in theory, because you'll be using Gift of Thorns and then Shade Ball. You will apply 10 and then 3 for very good cycles. And if you are applying this morale down, you are already decreasing damage. Sadly, the morale down is for only one enemy, while Gift of Thorns is for all enemies. And in most challenges, you'll be handling just one boss anyway. Even if it's AoE, it doesn't really matter. But the problem with all of this mechanic is, again, that you need to go first. Okay, it's a fast skill. Unless you have multiple fast attackers, she may not go first. But then again, if you attack before the boss and you will debuff, this will be nice since you'll be decreasing the incoming damage. But if your boss uses the 5 weakness before it even attacks because you debuff it too much, this happens a lot in Spiral Corridor. It also happens in some specific romancing fights. If you are debuffing too much, it will just remove it all and then attack you. So all your debuffs were negated. We lived through this generation, and many debuffers were just getting less and less used. Then we got people like Medea that over debuff it, and some bosses will only use the 5 weakness by the end of turn, or in very specific turns you still needed to debuff the enemies. Now, the problem here is that you have no full control over what's happening, and depending, if you debuff too much in one turn, you already trigger the 5 weakness, but in the next turn, if you don't debuff as much, you may not trigger. So, it is good in theory, hard to put into practice. And for Inheritance, she has Healing Breath. That's a recovery spell that's nice to have in some emergency situations. And the other skills don't matter too much. You have a triple S power attack, Tempest Orb, that will only apply 3 of the stacks. But maybe sometimes it's better to just apply 3 stacks, because that will lead into 15% debuff. Some bosses will already hate you if you debuff 30%. So the problem is that it costs 11, and the first skill costs 1, and she only has 5 per turn. That means that you need BP batteries, either Liz or Noel's daughter, in order to take advantage of Pale Nymph. But to be honest, we do have plenty of different debuffers. The good thing about Pale Nymph is that she debuffs intelligence and agility on the same time. Status that are used for accuracy of spells, but Even then, it's hard to take full advantage of debuffing those two things and making the enemy evade, since they also buff accuracy most of the time, because developers don't want us to full evade skill, so you'll be decreasing damage from spells and some martial arts attacks as well, instead of reaching evasion. Pale Nymph is nice, but really hardly applicable, and when she works, she's working amazingly, but when she's not, she's just a character that will stay in your roster. Sadly, as a specialist, she deserves an SS plus grade, but is easily skippable and a character that won't matter in the long run. Pale Nymph is the only character that has a future style, and she actually benefits from this version. She has a new skill that debuffs dexterity. That's actually an amplify over an old one, that's now just 2 BP instead of 3. And she can apply Moralidade medium for 3 turns, but it's a costly skill with 8. And she has a new type of effect. This time she'll be applying STR and dexterity debuff instead of agility and intelligence. But the good thing is that you can inherit from her first style, this skill called Gift of Thorns. Use it and then you will be applying intelligence, agility, dexterity, and STR debuffs. But this leads to the question, if you are debuffing all status, why don't you just use an all status debuffer like ScherBR or Rock Bouquet? Well, I don't know. And in this case of the next style, she applies 5 stacks via skill and another 5 stacks via passive. So 5% per hit. That means that you can debuff 50% just by the use of skill number 3. But it also carries the same problem of maybe debuffing the enemy too much and triggering the 5 weakness and not really helping. In the end, this banner is really bad. It is one of the worst banners we got in the recent times, with Furfur being the only selling point. She is good and all, she's using axes, and many people will have reasons to summon for to increase their damage potential for Remembrance, but in our reality you can just wait for future banners that will also have X units. You do just good, you don't really need Furfur for anything in the game. Vampire Lady is totally terrible with a design that barely works, and Pale Nymph, while being a good debuffer, is not really applicable to the hard challenges most of the time. Sadly, this banner only receives a bronze award. It's easy to skip, since they may release some much better banners in the next week. With all that said, this is my opinion. What is yours? Please say here in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. And if you want to support the channel, there are links in the description. You can use PayPal, Patreon, or Ko-fi. See you later on the next video or live stream. Bye.